And welcome back to the What's Next series. I told y'all we would be back, and we are. Um, Quick disclaimer, man. I, I'm a Celtics fan, and I was thinking to myself, like, I don't think I own any 76ers gear because I like to at least like somewhat rep the team that we're going to be talking about. And I'm like, man, why would I have any Sixers gear? And then I forgot I have this Allen Iverson shirt with the one of the best slam covers ever. So I had to rock it, man. I got my guy Trust to Love, my guy Michael. He's on the channel. Um, Had to get one of the biggest platform Sixers fan that I know to join. I'm glad that you're here, bro.
Really appreciate you having me, man. This is going to be exciting. And to your point, I don't own any Celtics gear. I probably won't ever own a Celtics gear, but respect to you for getting out the Iverson shirt. So that's cool. That's cool.
I had to, man. Like AI is one of the greats.
Mhm.
And I'm debating on getting a James Harden Sixers shirt. I'm still really debating because that's one of my favorite players, but I don't know if I can do it, man. The Celtics are too good right now, and you guys are looking like you're going to be reaching that level this season as well. So, the rivalry really might be in full effect this year.
Exactly. So, but if you like James Harden, though, you get like, don't let him being on the Sixers, because
I,
if he's a
know.
player you like, you gotta, right?
I know, but I might never like wear that shirt. I might just like
Yeah.
throw it in deep in the closet so nobody knows. But I don't know. We'll see. But before we get to the NBA talk, I like to give my guests the chance to plug where their content can be found and just talk a little bit about your content and what it's all about.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I do TikTok. Mostly like we met on TikTok, obviously. Mostly NBA videos on TikTok. Somewhat Sixers oriented occasionally, depending on the day, depending on the topic. And I have Instagram as well. I post Sixers on there. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's where you can find me if you're interested. Again, we met on TikTok. I post on TikTok, and a lot of solid people on TikTok I've met so far. So very excited to be here. Hopefully, never know. Hopefully, be on other people's at some point. Would love to as well. So again, appreciate you for having me, and yeah, excited to talk for real, for sure.
Man, for sure.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm gonna put the links in the description to all of your platforms, your YouTube included. But real quick, you're right. There are some really good people on TikTok, but there's also a lot of bullshit on TikTok. A ton of bullshit.
You could say that again.
Man, I love it's refreshing because now I follow enough people where I actually respect their content. But before I would just see like we all know the podcast like that. We just be seeing that it's like, oh, it's clear they don't watch basketball. They just like talking about it, and it's just it's bad content. But like you said, there's a lot of good content on TikTok as well. I've met a lot of great people on there.
For sure.
Yeah, but let's go ahead and dive into the Sixers. I want to get right into like the big turning point in the season for y'all because we all knew the Ben Simmons cloud was kind of hanging over Philly all year, since the end of the 2021 playoffs. And at the trade deadline, one of the biggest trades that I can remember in deadline history is essentially James Harden for Ben Simmons. What was your initial reaction as a Sixers fan?
Well, one thing that really was big for me was the Sixers finally getting rid of Simmons, because after what happened probably this time last year, maybe September of last year, I just thought to myself, I don't want this guy here anymore. He doesn't want to be here. Why would I want to root for a player who doesn't want to be a part of the team that I root for? So I was just excited to have Ben Simmons finally gone. But obviously, on a brighter note, James Harden. I was ecstatic to have James Harden on the Sixers. Before the whole thing went down in late January or early February, there was some discussion of James Harden might want out. Certain guys aren't happy in Brooklyn. And I made a couple posts on my Instagram. I was saying, hey, James Harden, if you see this, request a trade to the Sixers. You definitely won't regret it. And it's exactly what happened. And he said when he got here, the Sixers were the Sixers were my first choice. I wanted to come here. It just didn't happen. Daryl Morey waited a year and a half to trade for this dude because last year, like I said, James Harden wanted to come here. He wanted to come to Philadelphia, but obviously he got traded to Brooklyn. Daryl Morey missed out, and he wasn't going to let that happen again. So I'm really, really impressed by Daryl Morey getting that done and getting James Harden here. I'm just excited to see a full season of Harden and Embiid, really.
Yeah, I think it was kind of like a full circle moment because, like you said,
Yeah.
there was all that discussion when he first wanted out of Houston, and it was like they were kind of reluctant to give up Ben Simmons in that trade, and then it's like a year later it finally happened. But James Harden didn't look like himself for most of this season. I think, like me personally, as a James Harden fan, it was so hard to watch because it's like we went from seeing this man being like MVP candidate every single season, averaging 30 points a game. Nobody could check him one-on-one to he's struggling to blow by guys. He's just not looking as effective as James Harden has. I think my question is, like, do you think we're going to see a resurgence this year? Because I personally do think we will, but maybe that's the fan in me. What do you think?
I think we can see some of that. I can't say for certain that he's just going to be the 100% of what he was a few years ago because, like you mentioned, in Brooklyn, he was dealing with the hamstring injury. Now, this dates back all the way back to last year's playoffs. He missed a couple playoff games last year because of the hamstring injury. And either it wasn't fully healed or he just re-injured it. This past year, he was dealing with it again. And obviously up until January maybe of this year, late December of this last year, he was playing at an amazing level. He was arguably the Nets' best player this beginning of last season. And obviously January, February, March came around. Things didn't look right. It translated to the playoffs because he didn't really get time to fully heal. But with this offseason coming around, it looks like he's really working on getting himself not only in shape, but improving what has been kind of a shaky injury. Because like I said, he's been dealing with that for, I guess, like almost a year and a half now. And it's exciting to see. And I guess you're also hopeful because you want that to be true. You want him to have moved past that injury and really 100% fully healed himself because that's really what the Sixers need. Whether or not he's the otherworldly Houston version of himself or the Brooklyn version of himself, you need him healthy either way.
Definitely not. I like how you mentioned because people forget there was a stretch like you said, like late December-ish.
Yeah.
He was putting up the 30-point triple-double.
So
like,
crazy.
And it's like, oh, okay, he's back. He's figuring it out. But I think people don't understand, like, a hamstring injury is a very tricky thing that can really affect somebody for such a long time. So,
especially as you get older.
Exactly, man. Like, he's been playing at a high usage level for, like, pretty much a decade. So, of course, like, there's a lot of miles on his body. But like you said, I'm hoping that even though, like, obviously our teams are rivals, but just as a basketball fan, I do want to see him as close to, James Harden can get to his old self, because that just makes for a scary tandem. Because we know how good Joel Embiid is, and I think he even took his game to another level. What was it like watching him, especially like the first half of the season? Because he was having stretches where it was like 40 points every single night.
All I gotta say is history, man. He's making history. Joel Embiid's reached the level of play where he's making history every single night. He's just that good. And I can't, again, maybe this is the fan of me speaking, but I can't say that same thing for about 90% of the league. Like, there aren't many guys in the league where you could say, oh my gosh, this dude is must-see TV every night. You gotta watch him play. He's literally doing things that no one else is doing or ever has done. But with Joel Embiid, I can say that. Like, this dude has just kind of like what you said, he's been improving every single year. And he is just closing the gap incrementally every season between him and whoever else you want to put next to him. He's just gotten that much better. And I would like to think that he still can get better. I guess that's the optimism side of me speaking. I would like to think, and I would like to see him get even better than he is now, even though he's already, like I said, absolutely amazing. I think there's still a level that he can get to. And I think having a guy like James Harden alongside of him is going to help not only unlock that, but really have him tap into that. So I think this year is going to be huge. It's just going to be really exciting.
I think that's a perfect point. Like, having that really high level like even James Harden, when
Yeah.
he looked like a shell of himself, he's still a high level playmaker.
Exactly.
It's gonna make everything easier for Joel. And I'm on record. I said at one point last season, I didn't mean it like I meant it like literally. I said right now, Joel Embiid is the best basketball player in the world.
I have no
And
issue with that.
it's because he was going through a stretch. Like it was like 40 points, 15 rebounds. Like it seemed like every night. Because I got an Instagram page where we post highlights and stats and stuff. We was making Joel Embiid highlights every single night. And I'm like, bro, and he's doing this with a team that on paper looked like they shouldn't have been winning as many games as they were. Now, obviously, like we'll talk about Tyrese Maxey, how much he stepped up, but the team wasn't as talented, obviously, because you lost, Ben Simmons is still an all-star, at the end of the day. And Joel was just doing unworldly stuff. Like I remember when we played y'all in Boston, it was kind of early in the season.
That game winner?
Yes, that step back.
Dude.
I was like, when I saw that, I'm like, man, he's on another level this season, man. Like, and like you said, I think he can continue to get better, even though he's around like 28 right now. I think we still haven't seen the best of Joel, which is kind of scary.
I agree.
Super scary, man. Before we tap into like the end of y'all season in the off season, talk to me about Tyrese Maxey, because I, for one, did not see the big jump that he was going to make this season. What was your overall assessment of his year 2?
I'm not gonna lie. I think that if you're a Sixers fan or really an NBA fan and you say to me, yeah, I figured Maxey would do this, I feel like you're probably lying, because I just don't see a world where any of us could have seen this happening. I mean, he improved drastically, is an understatement, in every way, in every stat category, in basically every area of the game. I mean, he just had the perfect opportunity combined with the work that he's already put in. Like, he just, it's hard to describe. He's just a stud. I mean, he really is the perfect kind of number 2, number 3. Now alongside Harden, but before alongside Embiid. And he's just done so much for himself, but for the Sixers, like scoring wise, 3-point shooting wise, he was amazing this past season. I'm hoping he can keep that up. Scoring wise, just insanely quick off the dribble, great at getting to the rim, and he just brings so much at the guard spot that the Sixers really haven't had consistently. And the only time I can really think of is when they had Jimmy Butler back in 2019. And even then, I'm not sure that he was giving you that burst. He was giving you that quickness to the rim like Tyrese Maxey is. Like, I can go on and on about this dude. The improvements he made, I mean, nobody saw. I don't care who you are. You did not see this coming, especially at this level that he's been playing at. And like I said, I really hope he can sustain this, because if he does, like, the trajectory of his career is just going to keep going up, and he only improves the Sixers ceiling as well. So obviously he gets better as a player, but he also improves the Sixers overall.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, it's easy to say this because obviously he made a big jump, but I think another jump is like inevitable.
And he's only 22 too, so it's like you could definitely see that happening. It just comes down to, is it going to be next season, or is it going to be a season after that, whatever, because you've seen guys take that leap, but then kind of only take a small leap. Like, you're expecting another huge leap, but it's only a small leap, which is great still, even though it's not as big of a leap as you would expect, or as we would expect.
Exactly. And like you said, he's like, as a third guy now, like the perfect complementary piece, because he doesn't need the ball, and he's playing with 2 guys that kind of need the ball, like, for the most part. So I'm excited to see him. But the playoffs was kind of rough a little bit. Got up 3-0 in the first round. Got a little interesting towards the end, but able to close it on 6. And then obviously the Embiid injury. My personal opinion, I didn't think you guys were beating Miami even with Joel, just because I didn't trust James Harden. But ended up losing that series in 6. Was it disappointing to you to like be bounced in the second round after making the Harden trade mid-season?
Partially yes, but partially no, because Joel Embiid was injured coming into the second round. He literally had a broken face and a broken finger. So it's kind of hard, at least for me, to expect them to win, but you still would like to think that they have a chance to win because even with Joel injured, he's still the best player on the court for both teams. So that definitely goes a long way, in my opinion. And then the other side, well, Joel Embiid was injured. Obviously, there was something wrong with James Harden. The bench was horrible for the most part in the second round. So there's the side of, you can't really expect the Sixers to do much with Embiid hurt because he's their best player. And then there's the other side of, well, the bench was also horrible, so maybe we should have seen this coming from game, whatever it was, 2. Because Embiid was out game 1 and 2. And the bench was, like I said, really bad. And even with Embiid playing, if the bench was that bad, they weren't winning anyway. So it wouldn't have really mattered. But overall, I guess I was pretty disappointed because James Harden, adding a guy like that, you would have liked to see them put up a bigger fight in game 6, which is ultimately the game they lost and lost the series. You really would have liked to see them put up a bigger fight with literally the season on the line, even though Harden, whatever, had something going on with him and B was injured too. But I definitely would have liked a little bit more, especially from Harden in that game for sure.
I'm glad you said that because I think I might have made a tweet. I tweet a lot, but I think I said like the Sixers were playing like they had another game, like they were up 3-2.
Yeah.
And especially from James Harden, you can say like, well, the hamstring, blah, blah, blah. Well, he's out there playing. And he just kind of played with no sense of urgency. It's tough to watch. And I asked the question, like, were you disappointed? Because the first couple weeks looked very good from Philly. Like a lot of NBA fans were coming on their platforms and saying like, they look like they can win the championship this year. And obviously it fizzled out a little bit, but the offseason, I think really everything you just said from the bench being god awful, like DeAndre Jordan being on the bench is a no-go. Like that's terrible. Even like seeing Paul Reed get big minutes in the playoffs.
As an NBA player.
Yeah, DeAndre Jordan. Yeah, he shouldn't be. I'm on record as saying that. Like Cork Moss getting minutes and he can't even shoot anymore. Georges Niang being like basically one of the best players off the bench. It was a lot wrong, but Daryl Morey did his thing in the offseason. In my opinion, I think the best offseason, I think it's not even been talked about enough. Obviously, I think the first thing which really like made me like look like oh, they're making moves. The Anthony Melton, that was a big move. Big time move. You got rid of Danny Green, who sucks that he got hurt, but get that contract off the books for basically a late first round pick. The Anthony Melton, you get PJ Tucker in as well. And you also get like Daniel House coming in, who's like a James Harden guy. Like you guys really retold. Talk to me about the offseason. What are your overall opinions?
I'm really glad you brought this up because I like, again, I am a Sixers fan, but I agree 100% because I don't see a lot of people talking about the Sixers offseason. I truly think they had one of the best off seasons in the NBA. They did everything that they needed to do and nothing that they didn't need to do. They got bench pieces, like you mentioned, that they desperately needed. They signed Harden to a cheaper contract. They did they like the trade with D'Anthony Melton. Danny Green and 23 for D'Anthony Melton. I mean, that's fantastic. That's, I like Danny Green as a player. I wish he didn't get injured. It sucks, but he's not going to be contributing to your team. You got to get a guy who's going to contribute, who also fits the timeline, which is a bonus, but it's still great because he's like 24 still, which is even crazier. But the Sixers did everything that they needed to do. I see Sixers fans sometimes saying, "Oh, well, we didn't make a really big trade, or we didn't trade for this guy," but it's like they didn't need a big trade. I wish we all knew. I wish we were all on the same page before the offseason because they didn't need a big trade. We knew what they needed. They needed bench depth. They needed Harden to be healthy. They needed him to renegotiate the contract. And James Harden, he said after the playoffs, "I'm gonna do what I need to do to help this team." What does he do? He takes $13 million less because he wants to win a championship. And in order to do that, the Sixers have to sign better players around him and Embiid. And that's exactly what he did. So it was just a perfect offseason in my opinion. I'd have to think really hard to find things to like nitpick about. I don't like nitpicking, so yeah. I'm not gonna do that.
It's tough not to do that as a fan sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes you're like, they could have got another shooter. But no, you guys, like you said, perfect. I think it's an A+ all season. Like you said, one of the best. You can be a little boastful. It's the best. I can't think of a team that's contending that had a better offseason than Philly, man.
Yeah.
I can't think of a team that's actually like in contention that had a better offseason, man. You guys got, I think one thing that just like watching from a basketball perspective, you guys lack just toughness, I think, all around. And you guys got like a lot of toughness in PJ Tucker, obviously. Like we know what PJ Tucker brings to the table. Daniel House is another 3-and-D player. The Anthony Melton's pretty much a 3-and-D player as well. So it's like you guys get three like pretty high level 3-and-D guys to add to this roster of Harden, you know, Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid. I mean, Tobias, maybe like he can find his footing in this offense. Maybe a full year would be good for him too. I'm not sure how Sixers fans really feel about Tobias right now, but you know, how do you feel about Tobias? Because I've seen some people be like, I hope we trade him, and other people are like, you know, maybe he just needs time with the system.
Yeah, Tobias is probably the most polarizing guy with the Sixers, at least for fans, because I see people all the time, oh, he needs to be traded, or he's not worth his contract. And yeah, that's totally reasonable to say. The only thing is, when the Sixers gave him that contract, it was the right move at the time because they thought he was going to play as he did before he got offered that extension. Which, I mean, aside from, well, I guess this past year, he was great last year. And while he may not be worth the entire contract, I think he's a phenomenal player. I think having James Harden on this team, and you could say the same thing for most guys on this roster, probably everybody, really. I think having James Harden on this team is just going to help him out even more. I think he's best as a catch-and-shoot three-point shooter, especially from the wings, from the corners. He was at his best when he was really doing that, and he needs to double down on that. So I really like Tobias Harris as a player. I think he's not exactly what the Sixers need, but I think he works very well in this roster, in the environment of this team. So I like Tobias Harris a lot.
Yeah, I hope he's been working on his catching and shooting because it seems like he always has to take a dribble. Like it seems like
he likes to do it, and I'm not a huge fan of that. I wish he would kind of like shy away from that a little bit occasionally.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned his 2021 season though, because I agree he was really good.
He was good. He was almost an all-star.
Yeah, and he was like, I remember it was a specific game. I don't know why I always remember this game, but it was against the Knicks, and that's when Julius Randle was All NBA that season, and he was clamping Julius Randle up in the fourth quarter. I'm like, I've never seen Tobias play defense like this. Like he was playing so good that season. So if you can get like 75% of that, that's just another weapon. That's just another like big time option, you know, on this team as like a fourth guy essentially, like the way that Maxey is ascending. So it's a lot to be desired with Philly, man. I'm kind of like, I'm so intrigued to see how this season goes, man. I guess I'll just ask you the question right now. Like, what are your realistic expectations for Philly going into next season?
Honestly, man, I don't know. Last season, like, I didn't have anything. I didn't have any expectations because, like, what you mentioned earlier with the Simmons thing, I was like, well, if this dude's not gonna play, I don't know what the Sixers are gonna be. I don't know where they can go. I don't know what they can do. I'm just gonna put my expectations aside and see what happens because obviously I had no idea that James Harden was gonna get traded to the Sixers. But this year, I think I find myself in the same boat because it's a big year for the Sixers, like we talked about a couple minutes ago. Like there's a lot of factors that are gonna be going into them playing at that high level that we all want them to play, which is make the NBA Finals or at least make it past the second round. And even the bare minimum of getting past the second round, there's going to be a lot that goes into that. Harden staying healthy, Embiid staying healthy, bench playing well, Maxey being consistent. Like you said, Tobias Harris, Doc Rivers not being awful. There's a lot that goes into that. And I think as the season goes along, we're going to see how that unfolds. I know a lot of Sixers fans, and probably, I mean, you probably do this with the Celtics too. Probably every fan does it, but, you know, they're like, oh, this team is a contender, or like, oh, this team is this team is that. But with the Sixers, I I just don't know. I don't know. I think it's way too big of a question mark right now to really put a label on this team. And like I said, as the season goes along, I'm gonna just see what happens.
Yeah, I think it's more difficult to judge even like my team. I think it's more difficult this year than any before because the East is so damn good.
Mhm.
Like, and even with like, the KD news and probably him and Kyrie being back, even though I don't think they're as good as a team that they could potentially be, that's still another threat. And you guys, us, we got the Bucks. Miami's still gonna be really good. The Hawks got better, and I'm probably forgetting some teams too. Like, there's so many good teams in the Eastern Conference. It's hard to really gauge like what the pecking order is right now. Like, I'm still not even sure. Like, if like the Celtics got better, I'm not sure if we're like a shoe in to get
That
back to
Brogdon
even.
pickup was crazy.
It was good, but I'm like, I don't even know if we're shooing to get back to the conference finals. Like, the East is so I think like every year, like it might take something like a big, God forbid, but an injury might happen or something might happen that pushes a team to like get to that next level. It's tough, man. Just give me a like overall prediction though, because everybody's been given.
Okay.
I've had a Bulls fan come on here and say, I think we can reach the conference finals. I've had people come on here and be bold. So just give me an actual prediction, man. None of that. I don't know. I don't know how to judge. Give me a prediction.
Okay. So the irrational side of me is gonna say Sixers to the finals.
Okay.
Because that's me tapping into like, the crazy Sixers fan that everybody thinks Sixers fans are. That's me doing that. But I'm a little more on the reserve side. I will say Eastern Conference Finals because on paper they have the talent. Obviously, when you take out some of the question marks, you can see it. You can definitely see it. They have the talent. This is probably the best team they've had in at least a decade, I would say, if you don't count 2019, which I definitely do. But if you don't, then at least a decade, probably since the Allen Iverson Sixers, honestly. So they have the talent. That's not up for discussion. It just is a matter of how is that talent going to be? Are they going to be consistent? All the things I mentioned a few minutes ago. But I'm going to say Eastern Conference Finals. On paper, I think they can do it. Just a matter of will they?
I don't think that's crazy at all. I
don't think it is either. It's just like I just have a hard time really putting a label on this team because, like I said, there's so much that goes into them doing anything significant at all.
Is part of that like difficulty, like trying to predict, like because of like the past, like you mentioned, 2019 was a heartbreaking one. You went through the process. I couldn't even imagine doing that as an NBA fan. Celtics had one bad year in the last, like, since I've been a fan, they've had like one really bad year. And I try not to think about it because it was such a bad year. Like, you went through the process, bro. Like what was that experience like as a fan? And we're probably around the same age too. So it's like, that's like you're in high school at that time. You got to go to school as a Sixers fan. Like, how was that experience, man?
Honestly, yeah, a lot of it comes from that. Like, I was just getting into the NBA when the process was underway, and I was just thinking, like, wow, like this is interesting. It was honestly kind of fun. I'm not gonna lie, because seeing all these guys play for the Sixers, there were a lot of really solid and overall NBA players to come from the process. Dario Saric, TJ McConnell, who's all these guys, like, they have roles with teams now, and they started with the Sixers in the process era. So it's kind of fun looking back, and obviously got them Joel Embiid. So that's something to be grateful for. And you can also bring up the awful misses they had throughout those years too. But I think it speaks to how crazy of a, whatever it was, 4-year span the Sixers went through. Sam Hinkie was like, you know what, we'll just go all in and trade everything and rebuild. And we're just going to try and hit on as many draft picks as possible. Like I said, not that many, but still quite a few. And I mean, when you get a franchise player Hall of Famer in Joel Embiid, I think that makes up for a lot of what they missed on.
I mean, yeah, you draft a generational guy in Embiid, and then Ben Simmons was an All NBA player, and you flip that into
count Ben Simmons,
and you flip that into James Harden. So I mean, at the end of the day, it worked. But Yeah, you just got me thinking. Like, I might have to do a deep dive because you remember Tony Roten had like that
I
20 point
used
per
to
game
like Tony
season.
Roden a lot, man. Michael
He was
Carter Williams, bro. I have his jersey. That dude was something. Something.
bro. Like Robert Covington came from that time.
I was
Jeremy
him too.
Grant.
Like he's got a solid role now too with the Clippers and with the Blazers last season. Like it's crazy.
So yes, the process was some crazy times because I remember like I was getting blown out by like 50 points, but
Yeah.
there was just so like there was a
They're just
revolving door of
vibing.
NBA players. Like vibe. It was really just
Just
vibes, man.
vibes, yeah.
Yeah, you just got me wanting to do a deep dive. I might have to do that on the 76ers, man, like the process era. But man, that's all the questions I did have, man. This is a great
Yeah,
conversation.
man, that was solid for sure.
Sixers to at least the Eastern Conference Finals. I'm writing that down. I'm gonna come back to you if it happens or not. But do you have any final words, man? Any direction for people to come find your content again?
I mean, you want to find me? Just search Trust the Love, Instagram, TikTok. You'll find me. You'll see my face. You'll recognize me. So that's all I got. Like I said, thanks for having me on. This was great. I really enjoyed this.
For sure. I told like Smoke and I told Zaytime, I'm like, we just got to get all the good TikTok creators and
Might as well. No
just
harm in
chop
that,
it up,
right?
man. Like just
Yeah.
chop it up, bro. Because it's good to have rational NBA conversations, man. It's very refreshing, bro. But my guy Michael, I appreciate you, man. Glad we finally got this interview done, man. I'll catch y'all next time with, I don't know if it's gonna be a what's next video. I'm gonna just be honest. I don't have a guest lined up. We'll see if we get one. If you know anybody, Michael, tell them to come on the channel because I need some guests.
Got you. I'll keep that in mind.
Sure. Leave a like on the video, subscribe if you are new, and we're out.